This is the number one problem, filling the waiting rooms of sex therapists and psychologists and marriage counsellors around the country.
Not fears about performance, not timing issues, not a lack of sexual attraction. But as summed up in a scene out of Woody Allen's classic flick, this is the problem.
How often do you sleep together?
Do you have sex often?
Hardly ever, maybe 3 times a week.
Constantly, I'd say 3 times a week.
It is the big problem when it comes to sex.
Look at me. I love you more than I've ever loved any woman. And I've waited longer for you than I've ever waited for any woman.
Desire and lack of desire, that's the problem.
What's the matter?
Women out of lust.
No sex for you.
And men out of luck, according to one expert. Not just some women, most women. Afflicted with libido, she labels feeble and fragile, while men fan an eternal flame.
This issue of men feeling they're not getting enough sex and feeling constantly rejected and denied that intimacy that they're so seeking from their partners. And it came out in this sort of howl of rage and despair from men, which was quite unexpected.
Is Bettina Arndt, veteran Australian sex therapist, author and broadcaster, onto something? Or is she just being provocative in her new book, The Sex Diaries?
I'm essentially arguing that women have a libido that is rather like damp wood. You know, it takes a lot of lighting, it gets easily smothered by the sort of rubbish in the day.
Isn't that insulting?
I don't think that's insulting. I mean, maybe an eternal flame, which is what I call the male libido, is more insulting. I'm just trying to capture something about how I see the essence of desire.
Remember the heady, floaty, lusty days of new love? No damp wood here. You hoped, dreamed it would go on forever.
It's interesting, I argue that flurry of love is really like pouring firelighters on that damp wood.
So the libido is there at that point?
The libido is very high, and that's associated with brain chemistry that pours on the firelighters, that increases sexual drive. We have research showing that it creates a boost to sexual drive.
No, I never felt this way before.
A phrase that even has a name. Limerence.
It's a chemical thing?
Yeah, it's a chemical effect. And what's fascinating about that is, of course, she's going to then be a really sexy woman. She's going to want sex a lot, want it all the time, and he's going to think all his Christmases have come. He's found the woman of his dreams, a woman who really wants him. And then a couple of years down the track, the stage passes, and most people come out of that phase, that limerence phase, within 2 years, say. And she's back to this fragile, distractible libido.
What at first seems like depressing news for both men and women is the result of a study, by Bettina Arndt's own admission, not a very scientific study, calling for volunteers to write to her about their sex lives, keep day-to-day diaries of their sexual experiences. 98 couples took part, and those diaries, she says, show an overwhelming phenomenon.
Roger would probably still like to have sex twice a day, but twice a month sounds good to me.
I stopped initiating because I saw little point in asking, when I knew she'd say no.
You can't touch me, not even a little bit, without wanting me. I can never keep up. The demand is too great and I feel so tired.
I rarely think about or want to initiate sex, even though once I get going I enjoy it. It seems easier to read a book and go to sleep.
I vowed I would not be the one to institute sex again. That it had to come from her when she really wanted it. It's been nearly 5 years since then, and still no approach from her.
One man said it's my own Gulf War. You know, there's 6 inches between them in bed that becomes 1,000 miles. And that creates an enormous chasm between them. And that's the really sad thing, just how that can really erode the intimacy.
So you're very much on the bloke side of all this?
No, I'm not on the bloke side. I'm totally sympathetic to women too. I mean, it's a nightmare, this business, for both sides. Women don't want to be like that.
Surely this is just some women, not all women.
Well, it's not all. No, of course it's not, because I also had a group of women I call my juicy tomatoes, and they're women who are, in a sense, very like men. They have their eternal flame. They want sex all the time. They never stop thinking about it.
I see no reason why one couldn't have sex 14 times a week, once in the morning and once at night. I guess I'd love to be in a relationship where someone wanted me that regularly.
Are you a tomato?
I'm a tomato. Well, yes, of course I'm a tomato because I'm a single woman now. All most single women, and particularly older single women, are juicy tomatoes because you're in new relationships and then everything's going to work for you. But I haven't always been a juicy tomato.
So why do the lights go out?
The evolutionary psychologists would say that's probably meant to be. It's probably hardwired because mothers aren't supposed to be out there bonking. I mean, they're supposed to be looking after their children. So arguably we wouldn't be made in a way that means we have that strong drive throughout our lives.
So where do the blokes fit in? Why aren't they trying harder to entice women to want to have sex with them?
Well, look, some aren't. I agree. I mean, that's one of the criticisms I've had since my book was published in Australia. I mean, I've had women writing saying, well, women would want sex if men weren't such rubbish at it, you know.
Isn't it perhaps just the demanding nature of the men in your study?
Yeah. Look, one of the problems, and the men talk about this, is the starving man thinks of nothing but food. And men will acknowledge that when they've been in relationships when they weren't getting enough sex, they get obsessed by it. And they keep asking and asking and asking because maybe one time in 10 she'll say yes. And, you know, you just have to keep playing the odds, don't you? But they were sort of driven to it by the fact that they were starving.
Bettina Arndt's findings are actually backed up in another rather more scientific study of 20,000 Australians, where most women said the number one problem in their sex lives was their lack of libido, while only 25% of Australian men said they had low desire. So what does that mean for us? Maybe it's an Australian problem.
I think it's probably a New Zealand problem that people don't talk about.
Coming up next, good news, there's a solution, says Bettina Arndt.
Actually, it actually works for me.
And what the Kiwi sex doctor has to say.
She refers to women's libido as damp wood. I wonder if that's her personal experience.